Good evening and welcome to the Infowars Nightly News. Tonight is Friday, February 8th, 2013. We are live and I'm your host, Aaron Dykes. Tonight in the news, a 30-year CIA veteran is talking false flag at the Brookings Institute. Yet again, another open admission that the Western intelligence agencies run al-Qaeda, and he was there. Bruce Riedel admits the Algerian intelligence agency is in the business of, quote, creating false flag terrorists. This on the heels, of course, of the BP oil plant attack there in Algeria. Riedel gives a description of the Algerian counterterrorism unit, DRS, and its methods, saying, quote, the DRS is known for its tactic of infiltrating terrorist groups, creating false flag terrorists, and trying to control them. Rumors have associated the DRS in the past with the Malian warlord Iyad Ag-Ghali and even with Mukhtar Belmokhtar, the al-Qaeda terrorist who engineered the attack on the natural gas plant. So this is a CIA veteran admitting that the Algerian intelligence agency is in the business of, quote, creating false flag, of course, in concert with Western intelligence agencies. And it's not the first time. Brookings, of course, often mulls the idea of provocating to get their geopolitical agenda achieved. In a 2009 paper, they discussed the possibility of, quote, horrific provocation, saying in part, it is not impossible that Tehran might take some action that would justify an American invasion. And it is certainly the case that if Washington sought such a provocation, it could take actions that might make it more likely Tehran would do so, although being too obvious about this could nullify the provocation. However, since it would be up to Iran to make the provocation move, the United States would never know for sure when it would get the prerequisite Iran provocation. In fact, it might never come. Of course, many other think tanks also have discussed false flags to begin wars and other such events. Patrick Clausen from the Washington Institute for Near East Policy said earlier in September 2012, in part, if the Iranians aren't going to compromise, it would be best if someone else started the war. And those comments went on and on as he listed numerous false flag attacks that started some of the most famous wars in the United States. Just one among them, the Gulf of Tonkin Institute. The Gulf of Tonkin Institute. Meanwhile, Massachusetts has banned travel, declaring a state of emergency ahead of the blizzard. Their governor, Deval Patrick, banned travel as of 4 p.m. today and emphasized all non-necessary travel be banned. Of course, he exempted state employees and those doing public safety and utility work, but the law there does impose a $500 fine or even a year in jail if you defy the travel ban under national emergency. They've got at least 1,000 National Guard units on the way and may have up to 5,000 individuals there for that purpose. But history has shown that government intervention and especially FEMA's response to natural disasters, take Hurricane Katrina, take Hurricane Sandy, have been completely backwards and counterproductive and have often left citizens without power and under the thumb of government control, taking away their rights, and you name it. California has announced its intention to confiscate semi-autos under new proposed legislation in Kurt Nemo's article, rivaling the harshest in the nation New York laws. And if they pass it, it would not only outlaw all semi-automatics, but would force gun owners to load bullets one at a time. It comes, of course, with many restrictions, while the Democrats in Colorado are moving to hold gun manufacturers liable for shootings. It would require them to take out insurance and pay out damages if anyone goes crazy. It would further restrict and hold retail sellers of firearms responsible. A Republican in their state Congress, Greg Brophy, in the Senate, said to hold everyone in the entire chain of possession responsible for a crime committed by one person, the manufacturer, dealer, and owners, that's equivalent to blaming Coors for a drunk driver in 7-Eleven after someone steals a 12-pack. With more drones in the sky than ever, Seattle's mayor is banning police from using drones. Mayor Mike McGinn ordered the city police department to scrap their extensive plans to roll out drones they had already acquired through federal grant money. following a lot of protests from residents and anti-drone activists who had been going on for some time. Doug Honig, spokesman for the local ACLU chapter there, said they applauded the mayor's actions, and the drones would have given police unprecedented abilities to engage in surveillance and intrude into the privacy of the people there. It's further encouraging that a number of states and cities are looking to ban drone usage, including Florida and Texas among them, but the battle for the skies continues. Meanwhile, in California, just outside of San Bernardino, video shows a helicopter landing just to harass a woman who apparently was just exploring and picking up rocks in the desert. The chopper that cost more than $2,000 per hour just to fuel circled the woman for several passes and then landed to interrogate her about her activities. The policeman demanded the woman's ID and ran her background check and then proceeded to frisk her, at which time she said, "I know you're just doing your job, but I don't consent to a search." He told her not to worry about it. And you have to wonder, with all their budget shortages, why are they bothering with a random woman in the desert who apparently poses no threat? Well, she was told, "We're investigating something. Let's have your papers, please." Has the 2013 location of the secretive Bilderberg meeting been uncovered? Paul Joseph Watson comments on veteran sleuth Jim Tucker, who says they may meet in Chantilly, Virginia, again for the second year in a row. Of course, the Bilderberg have been very angry at all the exposure and news coverage, but they find it a convenient place to meet because it's right outside of Washington, and apparently may meet there. You could expect Alex Jones and plenty of supporters to protest their actions if that does happen. Now, I asked the question earlier today, is George W. Bush depressed? This is after a hacker leaked emails from Bush family members and some of their contacts and friends. It revealed things like correspondence about concern of the hospitalization of the elder Bush, arrangements for various family gatherings and events, but it also revealed some paintings and sketches done by George W. Bush. One of them is on screen there, spending a lot of time in the bathtub and in the shower, long reflecting moments, just kind of thinking, perhaps stewing in his own juices. So I'm asking the question, is he depressed? There were reports in 2004 that he was treated for heavy depression through very serious psychotropics, and various reports on how he was allegedly coping with his depression persisted through the end of his term. And we've seen it in history. LBJ and Nixon both became extremely depressed after they left their time in office, and they were both extremely corrupt presidents, just as Bush was. Bush, of course, had 9/11, the War on Terror, the Patriot Act, the wiretapping, the beginning of the drone strikes, wars in 2 countries, and the phony WMDs that led to the war in Iraq and million people dead. Is he grieving over it? Is he feeling guilty? And did he hate all the public outlash, the calls for his impeachment and more? Well, it definitely got to LBJ. He died only 4 years after leaving office. His lawyer and advisor, Barr McClellan, wrote in a 2003 book, Blood, Money, and Power, that he was not only implicated in the Kennedy assassination, but suffering from paranoia and depression that left him weakened. As of 1968, he said, Johnson was a broken man and could take it no more. Nixon, of course, was very upset after being forced out of office over Watergate, over threats of impeachment. He was known for being extremely reclusive, paranoid as well, and very depressed, kept away from the media. Is it happening to Bush? I feel like these very reflective, slow moments may not just be time out of office, but a sign of his decrepitude. And I wrote, editorializing the matter, that George W. Bush, like LBJ and Nixon, were thoroughly complicit in the crimes of their administration. Yet they were also overwhelmed, chewed up, and spit out by the shadow government system that used these puppet presidents to incrementally destroy the constitutional powers and protections. These used vessels are left behind to carry on the blame, scorn, and weight of a dark and looming legacy that has undone the country. History is filled with such men who did anything to gain power, but felt the stinging poison of their own medicine in decline. And just look at the Shakespeare play Macbeth. It's pretty classic. Meanwhile, in India, horror at the mass sterilization camp as women are dumped unconscious in a field after a painful operation. 2 doctors at this rural hospital carried out more than 106 sterilizations in a single day when they were limited by the rules and the law to supposedly only 25 sterilizations per day. It was part of a mass health drive, and they also further ignored the 3 hours of required observation for the women to see if they were healthy. This all comes under the broad family planning eugenics operation that's worldwide, that's driven by the United Nations and through the philanthropies of Rockefeller and other big elites, Bill Gates among them, and it's supposedly in the name of women's health, their reproductive rights, yet here they are literally dumping unconscious women into fields. And one of the activists in India made this comment: "We all know there's a severe risk of morbidity during sterilization, and I ask the question whether care has been taken or not." Well, that is, of course, an understatement. You remember a report about a year and a half ago that India was offering cars and TV sets as prizes for those who submitted to sterilization, and it's been even worse in the past, as they've had forcible sterilizations for some time. They're, of course, an overpopulated country, but they were the very first to be put under this globalist family planning eugenics regime way back in 1952. In the mid-70s, under Indira Gandhi, the daughter of the first Prime Minister Nehru of India, they instituted a supposed national emergency and forcibly sterilized in sterilization camps more than 8.3 million women, and more than 5,000 of them died. A horrible, atrocious legacy. You just saw the story where the family planning police in China ran over the 13-month-old boy because the parents had too many children and didn't want to pay the fine. It's a disturbing legacy, but something we all need to know about. We need to understand what these elites are up to. With that, I'm going to go to just part of a special report on eugenics I did during one of the very first broadcasts of the Infowars Nightly News. We'll end the night with that report. Are we ready with it over there, guys? We are, of course, live, so let's cue that up now. You can see the rest of it on YouTube at the Alex Jones channel under the name Global Extermination List Exposed. It's a 30-minute special report, but here's part of it. Thanks for watching.
Increasingly, through selective breeding, the differences between rulers and ruled will increase until they are almost different species. That's what mathematician Bertrand Russell said, capturing the predatory dominance behind the spirit of the eugenics movement. The vision was to transcend man. What nature does slowly, humans could do swiftly through genetics. Sir Francis Galton, first cousin of Charles Darwin, coined the term eugenics, and through the Royal Society in London brought it to prominence. Powerful and wealthy industrialists who'd concentrated huge monopolies at the height of the Industrial Revolution seized upon the elitist treatise, fueling an international movement for eugenics as a means of keeping the masses of humanity under their yoke. Human labor lost value under the rise of technology. Life had become cheap, as an emerging scientific dictatorship made man a mere cog in a vast machine. Eugenics became more than just a policy to guide reproduction wisely. It evolved into many branches of control under state power. From eugenic sterilization laws in the United States and Britain, to the extermination policies of the Nazis and other dictators, to controls on the use of resources, carbon taxes, and the number of children families can have, the New World Order emerged from the shadows, and the state religion of population control became an all-out war against the individual and family.
Good evening. I'm Aaron Dykes, and this is another Infowars special report. Tonight, we're going to go in depth and look into the eugenics movement and what it means for our modern society and how we came to be mere pets in this system which seeks total control under the New World Order. What is eugenics? It's an elitist philosophy for a transhuman man which leaves behind the husk of the underclass. It's a way to wipe out the regular man and devalue human labor. We've reduced ourselves to being nothing more than inventory in a complex system under this nation and under this global treaty. There really is population control in the literal sense going on this planet, and we're tagged, traced, and numbered. Everyone knows about the complications, the risks, and the horrifying nightmares produced by RFID, tracking technology. What will happen if we have a chip under us? Facial scans, iris scans, recognition. Where did that all come about? To find out, we have to go back to the roots of the modern eugenics system. Back in 1883, when Sir Francis Galton, cousin of Charles Darwin, coined eugenics and made it a movement that would transform our modern society, especially in the Western world. Francis Galton developed the first system of biometrics, including fingerprints for criminal identification. He also developed supposed theories for racial hygiene, for improvement, for supposed positive eugenics, where the elites could breed and expect to increase their fold. Instead, his family, the Huxleys and the others who bred with him, disintegrated into halfway intelligent and halfway just disturbed human beings with lots of problems. But the system he set up emerged not only in the UK, where he was part of the Royal Society of London, but also in the US at the Eugenics Record Office at Cold Springs Harbor Laboratory on the East Coast, where in the early 1900s, some of the most wealthy industrialists, including the Carnegie family, the Harrimans, and the Rockefellers, set up a centralized records office where they sent field workers out to talk to ordinary people to collect data, height, sex, history, number of people in the family, bloodlines, racial information, and centralize it all, hair samples, try to analyze it and try to figure out who was worth sterilizing and leaving behind in this world and who was worth breeding to increase the numbers of supposedly good humans. The use of IBM-developed Hollerith punch cards started being used in 1890 for the first U.S. census using modern scientific technology. This punch card allowed them to classify all these vital statistics and use the data to selectively analyze the population they were trying to control. That technology was further used by the eugenicist clique at Cold Springs Harbor for what was known as the Jamaican race mixing study, where in 1927 they studied the supposed benefits, risks, and tendencies of race mixing between, generally speaking, Negro and white populations and the so-called mulatto populations, all in Jamaica. That technology soon transferred over to Nazi Germany. These eugenic sterilization laws were not unique to Nazi Germany, though. The United States had these laws in more than 27 U.S. states, I believe 33 all told, set up starting in the early 1920s, but they didn't end until the late 70s and even early 80s, all disgracefully targeting the autonomy of the family and the individual, challenging the right to reproduce, and trying to bring in this eugenics world society. For a little more perspective on how bureaucracy became so tyrannical, let's look at the quote from Carroll Quigley, historian for the elite and author of Tragedy and Hope. He said that the modern man, the 20th century supposedly democratic man, will, in general, have his freedom and choice controlled within very narrow alternatives by the fact that he will be numbered from birth and followed as a number through his educational training, through his required military and other public service, through his tax contributions, through his health and medical requirements, and his final retirement and death benefits. Carroll Quigley warned us, or was simply observing, that we are a number from birth to death under this eugenics New World Order system, which is a centralized control system using the modern industrial technology. How did this become so dangerous? Well, it was the elites, including those who were already dominant and those who became dominant at the height of the Industrial Revolution, who established these super monopolies, which we know the Rockefeller oil monopoly, the Carnegie steel monopoly, and the Harriman railroad monopoly, very emblematic of that. They paired up with the rising collectivist models, not only socialism and communism, but fascism, Nazism, which is National Socialism, and also the kind of New Deal set up under the FDR system and other similar systems. We continue in one version or another of that system today. We have our Social Security numbers and all the other things just mentioned by Carol Quigley. So we have baby's blood and databases. We have the Human Genome Project, which tries to analyze our racial data and draw conclusions and supposedly provide a more promising future. But what else are they using that for? And why does this collective model become so psychopathic? Let's look at a naked statement from George Bernard Shaw, a leading Fabian socialist who led the promise of socialism, which may sound like a good idea. They're going to take care of you. But look at that logo behind him. That's a wolf in sheep's clothing. He wasn't talking about a friendly socialism. He was talking about how under socialism, you would not be allowed to be poor. You would be forcibly fed, clothed, lodged, taught, and employed whether you liked it or not. But if it were discovered that you had not the character and industry enough to be worth all this trouble, you might be possibly executed in a kindly manner. But whilst you were permitted to live, you would have to live well. But however you lived, you would be a cog of the state, servile to this centralized system. Now, today we have the post-World War II United Nations system, which itself has branches. UNESCO, the branch for education, science, and culture, headed by eugenicist Julian Huxley, who's from that original eugenics family, which included the Darwins, the Galtons, and T.H. Huxley, who was the elder grandfather of the author, Aldous Huxley, and Julian Huxley, the first head of UNESCO, also a transhumanist. You also have the United Nations Population Fund, which makes gross characterizations and recommendations, especially in developing and third world countries. You also have mechanisms like the World Bank and the IMF, now in the present day, using loan availability to supposedly improve and develop these countries as a condition to meet population reduction goals. Yes, there are population reduction goals, and the deep secret is that there's a global population database apparatus in use, not necessarily centralized in one location or another, but continued through the philosophy of these eugenicists and the collectivists, used today in our bureaucratic systems, but also used to analyze our supposed racial data and our supposed worth as human beings. We're looking now at a chart of the top foundations who were giving to population control causes in the year 2000. You can see that in the case of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, hundreds of millions of dollars a year are going to causes including, but certainly not limited to, abortion. You also have other top technocrats like the David and Lucille Packard Foundation of Hewlett-Packard, the other computer company, also giving hundreds of millions of dollars. The Ford Foundation, the Hewlett Foundation, the other half of HP, the Rockefeller Foundation, MacArthur, the Ted Turner Foundation, and the George Soros Open Society Institute, all contributing to overt and covert population control causes, especially in the developing and third world. Now let's take an even closer look at the Rockefeller Foundation, a prime example in the modern-day eugenics movements. They were, of course, very powerful industrial family, of course allied with even bigger families like the Rothschilds. And they learned that their oil empire was hated, especially in America, in the early parts of the 20th century. They were funding the birth control movement headed by Margaret Sanger. They were also funding the Nazi Germany Kaiser Wilhelm Institute, which was a huge vehicle for the entire Western European eugenics movement. They were further funding social engineering through many of the universities, including Caltech University in California, where they sought to use the early eugenics even before they discovered the full potential and exact mechanism of DNA, at least officially. And they were using some of the most famous scientists in the world to pursue research and development towards the biochemical engineering of man, to remake him into a compliant and willing servant of the state. They were literally using the emerging genetics and DNA information, what they knew about breeding in the genome, to produce the sort of citizens they wanted in what was already becoming the post-industrial world.
You see, after the rise of machinery and centralized technology, the modern state, human labor lost its premium. It wasn't worth as much. And you look at where we are today in the 21st century with everything robots and nanotechnology and the sort of Ray Kurzweil vision of the future promises, and you can see that human beings as we know them, especially the masses, are not considered to be worth any more than the papers on this desk. They're just scenery, something to be kept if a good socialist government wants to keep after them, or to be just ruthlessly exterminated under this eugenics system. So the Rockefellers have been part of that, and even after the war, they used the environmentalism vehicles, the carbon tax vehicles, and especially the vaccines and genetically modified food vehicles to target humanity from the perspective of his biosphere and from the perspective of within his and her own body. It's disgusting, ladies and gentlemen, but we could see that this global apparatus, which is tracking the population and seeking to control it, has been all over the world in an organized manner. So right now we're going to go to a clip showing you how the family planning vehicle, which sounds quite innocuous, contraception, kind of somewhat reasonable choices in reproduction, became a vehicle of tyranny. Let's go to that clip.
And since the war, industrialists have been taking a deep interest in fertility control. As a part of industry-sponsored programs, health and welfare specialists go to workers' homes. Gradually, these programs break down shyness until at neighborhood meetings, birth control instruction begins. The government discusses it openly in magazines, newspapers, and films. Aided by interested industrialists, by a wise government, and by their own educated choices, they are deciding to keep families small.
This is one of the few rural-based family planning programs in the state of Madras. Using posters and other aids, Padma describes the problem in personal terms. Family planning may be the key to solving India's food problem. Fewer children mean more money, which means more food, better clothes, and education, even more love.
China is now conducting an intensive family planning campaign. Parents should have only 2 children, with a recommended spacing of 4 years. Propaganda work is necessary to counteract the pressures from grandparents to have more children. In China, family planning is not only a personal matter, but a national concern. Messages are broadcast over radio and the ever-present loudspeaker.
And of course, there's a lot more information about the draconian, the drastic measures they've taken under eugenics to try to rein in the world's population, especially in China and India, but really everywhere. That is up on YouTube at Globalist Extermination List Exposed. But if you're watching that report, you probably see there's been a big transformation between the me you see tonight and the me from a year and a half ago. And people always ask me how I lost the weight. Well, I was on the longevity regiment. You can find it at InfowarsTeam.com. It's not even that we're here to plug. It's just I'm trying to help people get healthy because it's one of the keys to turning things around, awakening our minds. And if you go over to the healthy blood sugar pack, you get your Beyond Tangy Tangerine, your EFAs, that's omega-3 and omega-6. The body needs it but can't make it. You also get OsteoFX. It's got vitamin D, calcium, and magnesium. And the other key, Sweet Ease, it's got vanadium and chromium, really helps regulate the blood sugar, can help you lose weight if you do the exercise, if you eat right. For me, that meant avoiding a lot of carbs, cutting down big time on breads, pastas, and other things. Just a little hint if you're wondering about my personal transformation. But we've seen in so many ways how the authoritarians, how the New World Order elites will do anything to achieve their agenda, and they've really lost sight of humanity in the meantime. With that in mind, we turn to our daily quote, putting just one of those examples into sharp focus. Interviewer Leslie Stahl said, "We have heard that 500,000 children have died. I mean, that's more children than died in Hiroshima. And you know, is that price worth it?" Talking about Iraq. Albright says, "I think it's a hard choice, but the price, We think the price is worth it. That had to do with Iraq sanctions. That was back in May 12th of 1996. She was, of course, Secretary of State under Clinton. You can support us financially, but also spread the word by subscribing at prisonplanet.tv. You can go to planetinfowars.com. Start your own page, fight your own Infowar. But whatever you do, get the word out. Talk about these issues. Expose these people. Let's turn things around. Let's save our republic. Revitalize the Bill of Rights. We'll be back again next week. Thanks for watching the Infowars Nightly News.